of March 2016. A fairly full meeting today and a packed agenda. We have our usual crew. I'm not going to read them out, but they're in the document. And we do have Bradley Meck, who's joining us today as an observer to talk about modules. So we are going to hop, hang on. Yes, no, we're going to hop into stand up and we're going to start off. I think most people are starting to write in the document already. But Nikita, do you want to start us off?
I have just done some issue comments and I think a pair of reviews and nothing else. Next, I think is Colin.
I think next is actually Chris.
I've just been doing NPM stuff this last week, so Colin can go ahead.
Just reviewing issues and pull requests. Most of my development time I've been spending working on a libuv pull request. Evan is next.
Yeah, I've commented on a few issues and pull requests, and then I released 5.9.0 last week. Next is Jeremiah.
Hello, I have done a lot of general PR work. I refactored src/node.js into multiple files, and there is no longer any JavaScript in the source directory. That's all in the lib/internal directory now. I've also worked on checking if handled is refed or not across all handle wrap that is exposed to JavaScript. Also worked on documenting all CLI options better, including on the website, and also did the 5.9.1 release today. The next is Fedor. If Fedor is here, I don't think so. That would mean the next is James.
Yeah, so I've been spent the first part of this week doing PR and issue triage, doing quite a bit of cleanup there. Also, we're going to be finishing up the process warning and a couple of buffer related PRs, and working on a PR that adds buffer support to the FS module, so we can pass in buffers file path, the path and found into the buffers and get buffers back from things like reader. So just been heading code. I don't have the list in front of me, so I don't know who's next.
I think it's Josh Gavant.
Yeah, that's me. I actually just started talking with Pat Miller from the Tracing WG, and I've been doing some triage, trying to gather together all the diagnostic APIs and hooks that we have in various places and related projects and products with the goal of moving forward that diagnostics work. All right, I'm supposed to say who's next, and that's Michael Dawson.
Right, so pushing forward the test that will run the V8 test from the node tree. It now compiles on ARM, but there's one failure which I need to look at to figure out whether it's a real issue or not before we can declare that done. Started working on adding Z-Linux machines, creating the Ansible templates to configure those. Involved in a number of miscellaneous issues related to things like libuv and the FS watch for AIX. One test fix that we were seeing in the PowerPC SUSE OS distribution builds, and sometime getting ready for the upcoming VM Summit. And next is Michael Rogers.
Sorry, couldn't find the mute. Just doing a lot more data work to try and get a grip on all of the org-wide data and preparing various data points and stuff for the board meeting next week. I don't have the thing in front of me, so thanks.
Brian White.
Okay, I mostly was just reviewing PRs and issues as usual, not too much else. The next is Ali.
I was working on fixing a regression that got added to 5.9 because of some of the Contextify changes. And apart from that, I was working with the V8 team to get a CI of Node.js working on the V8 build waterfall. And I'll paste the link in the chat as well. Yeah, so that's basically it. I think next is
Yeah, I just ended a PR to fix an issue with the race condition reading key press events that was reported on Windows. It actually turned out to affect other platforms as well. Then I'm started preparing for the VM summit and with Arunesh from Chakra. We're trying to prepare a proposal for this group for next week so that we can get additional input to bring to the summit, kind of summarizing the community feedback on the benefits and costs of VM neutrality and try to gather additional input. And then I'm also working with my team on a few other Windows issues. There's an issue about loading modules with long file names. We ran benchmarks on Windows. We're making progress on a native module build service. We fixed ETW events, which were broken, and we're publishing, we're working on the change to publish Node PDB and a zip package of Node FNPM from the release side. That's it for me. Next is Bert.
So, as usual, I have nothing to report. So the next person, I don't know who's the next person.
I'm the next person, Rod.
Yeah.
I've been doing usual build, yak shaving. Started a Raspberry Pi donation drive for Raspberry Pi 3 and some older Raspberry Pi 1s. That's going really well, and people are really appreciative of having a place to contribute that is, that doesn't involve them having to give up time and other resources, but they can give money. So it's I'm enjoying that. Doing some TSC and board stuff. We've got the Collab Summit coming up next week with the board meeting in person happening somewhere in the US. And I've also been a little bit out of action with some health problems this week. Hopefully that's getting better. Next one is Stephen Loomis.
Yeah, so I don't think I have anything relevant for here. I did, yeah, probably nothing relative. Let's go on to Bradley.
I'm just waiting on a vote. I'm not really involved right now beyond that.
Trevor's
Trevor.
So a lot of my time has been sucked up trying to keep up with all the issues and PRs that James has been poking. He's been very aggressive about that. Thank you. And addressing feedback from my async wrap PR, hopefully get that one finished up this week to everyone's satisfaction. And also, I finally collected all the data I need to finish my domain post-mortem write-up, and hopefully I'll also be able to finish that this week. That's it. Next is Rich.
I've been doing the usual issue triaging and reanimation of issues that have been abandoned or neglected. Fixing some flaky tests as they pop up because that work never ends. And also doing a few community-ish things like recording a podcast here and walking someone else to their first contribution there, that sort of thing. And I think that is it for the stand-up. We didn't miss anybody, did we? Awesome.
Big list. Thanks very much. Okay, quickly review of last meeting. We started the discussion about ES module detection, and we're going to continue that this week. The issue about adding Michael Dawson back to the CTC was raised, and we're going to talk again about that this week. Process and warning event, that's on the agenda. I don't know if it still needs to be, but we've got it this week as well. and the TSC scope as well. It's back on the agenda, I think. So let's hop into it. We're talking about issue number 5779, which is adding new collaborators, and there's been discussion about the process for this. Rich, do we have anything to add here, or do we want to take this back to GitHub?
I think we want to take this back to GitHub. We had a brief conversation before the recording started, and I think we were all straight on what we need to do, and we'll just go forward and make this happen. Well, Evan will probably actually go forward and make this happen. Thank you, Evan.
Awesome. That's how we deal with issues here. Okay, next one. 5763, which is backporting new buffer constructor APIs. James, what's the summary here, and what do we need to be aware of and make a decision on?
So the background, just as a reminder for everybody, we landed the new buffer APIs from Alec and Alec Unsafe last week, and also the zero fill buffers command line. We needed we had a discussion on the LTS work group on Monday about getting these backported to version 4, 0.12, and 0.10. What was decided by the LTS working group was that we would backport the zero fill buffers command line arguments to all 3 LTS lines, but that the new buffer APIs themselves, the from Alec and Alec Unsafe, would only be backported to version 4 in an upcoming minor lump. We have a few other minors that are starting to queue up, and that we would get those in. The soft deprecation of the buffer allocator would not be backported at all. We're just talking about adding the new API, so it's for minor. And then adding the command line argument to all 3. And that was what the LTS work group decided. We also discussed, though, that we wanted to run that by CTC to make sure there are no objections to that plan.
Primarily, do we want? Are we all okay with? Pardon?
The only thing that would go
of touching 0.10.
The only thing that goes into 0.10 or 0.12 is the zero fill buffers command line argument that would force new buffer and new slow buffer to zero fill by default.
By default with the flag. So not by default.
With the flag.
When the flag is on.
So without adding command line options, it doesn't have any effect, right?
Right.
It's just that we have a, we've made a commitment about what maintenance mode means, and 0.10's been in that for a while, and 0.12 is about to be in that. And it's a pretty high bar for running stuff, and we can argue this is a security thing, but it's sort of a soft security thing.
The argument on the security side is that we know there are modules out there that were not implemented properly that do have security vulnerabilities that have not yet been updated. And those are, they're older versions. Users of 0.10 and 0.12 would be the most likely to be affected by that.
I would.
So this would help mitigate that.
I would chip in that the patch itself is not invasive into the source. It's almost completely additive. And so in terms of complexity of change, despite maintenance mode, I think we can remove that concern completely.
Right. I think Rod's concern is that maintenance mode means we don't add anything ever, basically, unless it's specifically like an active security bug.
Okay.
Right.
Right, and then the discussion is whether this is enough of an issue or not, right?
Right.
Yeah, this is a usability security bug, so it's not like it's the whole buffer number thing, which is a usability problem that is leading to real world problems. But it's not like an active thing where, in the sense that, oh my God, there's a hole, we've got to fix it. Yeah, I like, there is, at some point we have to say to people, you need to get off 0.10, 0.12. Sure, we'll fix bad stuff, but I guess the question is this enough of a bad thing to warrant that work? I mean, and Trevor, I take your point that it's not a huge invasive change, but still, there's got to be a bar.
So let's separate a little bit. Is there any objection to landing both the command line flag and the new APIs in version 4?
Can we just hear the rationale for the APIs in version 4?
I think it was so that people could already start moving off onto the new APIs, like as much as possible across the ecosystem.
I can't see that argument because, I mean, taking into consideration, if this only lands in 6, and people will be stuck, like a lot of people will stay on 4, at least to the end, very, very end of the LTS, right? When I say people, I mean like big companies. And for backwards compatibility, they're, not going to be using the latest API, or they'll need a shim, for it. And while, unfortunately, a lot of modules that developers write are individuals that like to stay on the latest and greatest, which would prevent them from then upgrading modules they depend on because they then cannot use the new API. While I personally don't enjoy the idea of backporting the API, but for the sake of migration, I feel like it's necessary.
So I don't think I've got any objections in this case, but I want to point out the slippery slope of that argument. That in two ways, it can also suggest that things could go back into 0.10 and 0.12 much more invasively by using the same argument. But also, what is the barrier for features that we want people to migrate to that we would then backport into LTS? There is a progression here that we expect people to migrate to new APIs over time. And in this case, the argument is that there are security concerns with the way people are using the old API, but it is a little bit of a slippery slope to be using that argument for backporting things to version 4. Personally, I'd rather us not touch version 4 so aggressively with new features, but in this case, I'm not objecting.
So it is possible to polyfill this in 4 rather easily. I have an experimental module that I've already pushed out that does this. It adds a buffer from buffer alloc unsafe. As polyfills, you require it. It just sets it on the global object, and you can use, and anyone can use it. So there is that option. It can be done in user land, and anyone who wants to upgrade to those. If you have a third-party module that wants to use those, they can require that. It just sets those up for the entire application. If that, so if we don't do it in 4, at least we have something, an approach we can point them to. Say you can go do it that way.
If that would be an appropriate path, I personally would like to go that way. But
you said you would prefer to do that approach, the polyfill?
Yeah, I personally would prefer the polyfill approach, but I question what effect that would have on the community of users. Like, oh crap, now we need to go add this new module to our package or whatever. If people here don't think it would be that big of an issue, I like the idea of offering the polyfill in case people have conflicts.
Why don't we do this then? Why don't we hold off on backporting the actual APIs to version 4? Have this module be available. Give it a little bit of time to see what the ecosystem does, and see what they start requesting. If there are requests to pull these back into 4, then we can reevaluate it.
Okay, we have time here on our hands, which is good. Yeah, what I'm concerned here is that we protect LTS as something that's stable and sacred. You know, versions on version 5, we don't want to have people start distrusting the LTS branch. We want people to be able to make that decision rationally that, okay, version 5 is going to have some stuff in it that may break because it's fair or is tried and true, battle hardened version to use. That's all trusted. Okay, so James, I'm fine with that proposal. Anyone have any comment on that before we move on?
Well,
Rocket, did you have a comment?
Yep. The one other part of this would be the zero fill buffers command line flag. Do we want to get that into 4? That one cannot be polyfilled, of course. Any thoughts on that?
It's going into 0.10 and 0.12. It's pretty hard to justify it not going to version 4.
Yeah, but what if it isn't going to 0.10, 0.12? I mean, I think we should probably backport to version 4, but
I have no opinion on it landing on 10 or 12, but I feel like landing on 4 is fine. It's not even an additive, API change.
Do we have to label it Semver minor? Do we have any other Semver minors backed up here, or are we risking a version 4?
I'm sorry.
Hey, can we back this one?
Roger's kind of breaking up. I can't quite hear what you said.
I think there's one.
Just wondering if we have other Semver minors backed up.
I think there's only one because we landed a whole bunch of them just recently.
No, we don't have to push it out soon, right? This flag and the new APIs aren't going to ship in a release until V6. So that gives us at least a month out. And we can hold off actually doing a new minor release on 4 for a month or two. And the idea was not to push out a new minor on 4 at least until then. So we can pace them out just a little bit more. So I don't think it's a particular rush for getting a release out with this. It's just more of, are we actually going to do this? So we can get it landed in staging and have it sit until we're ready.
Sounds to me like there's no major objections, but how about we just look, like you said, put it in a holding pattern for now. We'll just give it some time. And opinions may come up.
The only other thing is,
we'll get it properly tested.
the only other thing is I do have pull requests for this, for landing both of these, the APIs and the flag in version 5. I'm going to assume that is fine. It definitely needs more, review and LGTMs. But does anyone have any objections to any of these in 5?
I will object any objections landing in V5.
So, okay. So those pull requests are out there. If folks can take a look at the V5 ones, and I'll put the ones for 0.10, 0.12, and V4 kind of just on hold for now, and we'll revisit that later. Sound good?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I would like to see the pbig portrait to version 4 because there are a lot of models that are affected by this. Basically, everything that performs base 64 encode to decode is affected by this. And the need to migrate to the new IP is already a huge barrier for various model editors. And if you say to them that it's not available in version 4, they are probably not going to use it. I'm not going to use the new IP, and the need to install a polyfill is just an extra barrier on top of the existing one.
Yeah, I think we agree. It's just we do have to be careful of that slippery slope argument there, because we can make the same statement about other APIs that we are introducing or changing. So we're going to be clear that this is a security thing that we're doing it for. Yeah, I just find this one difficult because it's not a security problem for core. It's a usability problem, and it's something that has caused security problems in the ecosystem because of usability problems. So it's not black and white. This is a security problem. Let's fix it. It's a usability thing so it's not a strict thing that we can draw a line on. Yeah, let's just be clear that we're treating this one as a security issue for the purpose of backporting. Anyway, we've got to move on. Issue number 5689, which is prioritize current local directory for lookup. James, you tag this one. Do you want to give us a summary of this, please?
Let me go back and look. Prioritize. Sorry, I gotta refresh my memory on this one a little bit.
This was the one that was reported by John Dalton about looking up dot dash
right.
low dash,
so
loading from node modules rather than local.
Yeah, I flagged this just to make sure, it being a Semper major and it touching the module, that there wasn't going to be any issues with changing the order of these, the load order. And is this a type of change that we want to make? And now I know Ben had a similar change in mind that he's been looking at for changing another part of this order. It's hopefully a very slim possibility of this breaking someone, but I think it's a non-zero chance. So we just need to make sure that this is something that we're fine with.
Well, if it's marked for Semper Major anyways, I think that the small chance is worth it. Because isn't it, don't the docs state that this is how it's working? Or is that another one of the issues?
On this one, I don't believe this is the discrepancy with the docs.
Yeah, I don't see any links to docs, so.
Yeah.
think this is one of those surprise APIs where it's intuitively people expect it to happen one way, but it happens another. I think that's what's going on here. So we have to be comfortable that this does match with what we think user intuition will be on this one, and then update it accordingly. And I noticed the pull request from Philip J doesn't have docs updates, so we should do that if there is a docs discrepancy going forward.
Yeah, my instinct is that this is a change we should make. But yeah, just like you said, I think it gets it back to the way you think it should work.
Bradley, you know a lot about the module system. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I would say it made sense to me when I read it about local lookup. I'm not strong either way. The whole thing with having it go local first makes more sense just from the standpoint of relative paths are locally done, but I'm not strong either way.
I don't know how it works on Linux, but on Windows, you call load library with the standard flags. This is the default behavior. So from a Windows developer perspective, this makes complete sense.
Right.
I think also that if, sorry, I was just going to say that I think that there's also a problem here. If you actually have a module that's the same name as a package in Node modules, to get it, you have to, I think you'd have to add .js to the end of it to even get it. Is that right?
No, it'll be picked up once we fail directory. So
yeah, but if you have a Lodash module installed, a package installed, and you have a Lodash.js locally, and you want to require that Lodash.js,
you have to have
not the Lodash
/Lodash.
But yeah, that's what this is fixing though. But before that, /Lodash would load it from Node modules. So getting Lodash.js, you'd even have to add the .js to the end of it. Okay, look, it doesn't sound like there's any huge objections here.
/Lodash should definitely not load it from Node modules. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
we should do this in the major.
It's a bug if anything starting with dot or ... is pulling from Node modules. Those should always be relative to your existing file, not from relative to your package.
I think we're good to go ahead with this.
I think we are too. It's just a concern for the fact that it's been around forever, and there's this possibility that somebody is making use of this in some creative way. But yeah, I think as long as we update docs and make this clear, then version 6 should be fine.
So
that's my thoughts.
So first of all, it seems that everybody agrees that the new behavior is better. If you're really concerned about like it might break for people, what you could do is add detect the situation where the require was ambiguous and then print a warning. So like if something suddenly breaks, there will be also a warning like, hey, we loaded this file, but maybe you meant that one in previous versions. That what it was would it have done? I don't know.
We could do that in version 5.
Yeah, you could do that like in order ingredients.
Now, quick note, Bradley, you said dot comes from the current directory. That's not necessarily true if you use process dot change dir. It basically it loads from whatever process dot cwd returns.
This is not the case for require. Require always is
not require.
Yes, I just tested it. I did process dot change dir to a different directory. I did /script in that directory, and it loaded.
Can you just send me the example? It shouldn't do that. That's some horror that was introduced at some point if it's doing that.
That does sound pretty bad. Okay, let's take this back to GitHub.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's issues around here
Herbert's
that we should
probably using the repo, so that's and the repo doesn't really have a directory, so that's why it maybe behaves that way.
If it was in the repo, correct, because the repo is bootstrapping it onto node paths.
Okay, let's move on to more module stuff. Issue 45648, which is why Bradley's here, is module detection. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to catch up on the latest of this. Bradley, do you want to tell us what you need from us this week?
So what I'm looking for is a vote of confidence, not commitment, that Node wants to do something some way, so I can just go off and finish bike shedding the exact details. And our two options remain. We need to detect ES modules before we parse the file. And we can do that either by introducing a file extension or by putting metadata in package.json. There aren't other options that are viable for a very large list of reasons. So I'm looking just for a vote so I can go finish bike shedding and confirm with all the involved parties that they're okay, and then we can start implementing later. That makes sense?
Sort of. I'm interested. So last time I got the impression that there wasn't much interest in using the package JSON option. Is there anyone here that prefers using package JSON as metadata over a file extension? Okay, is there anyone that
Yeah, to break the silence, I like neither of them very much, but I like the file extension way better than the package JSON option.
Yeah, I think I agree on having the file extension might be better.
Just in the wild, there have been some people who want the package JSON more. So that's why it is still in the running. So the vote here pretty much decides that, because we haven't had major commitment from any standards bodies, and this is the closest thing to a standards body that is left to ask for commitment. So.
Okay, well, if we need that level of formality, let's frame it this way. Let's do a vote on if we were to introduce ES modules to Node. That's if we were. Would we, do we want to do it by file extension detection rather than any other metadata mechanism? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Is there anyone that is abstaining from this because for whatever reason?
Yeah, this is James. I'm going to abstain because I need to learn more about the ES6 modules before I can weigh in.
I'm
also
going
to abstain.
I'm abstaining as well.
Is there anyone that objects? Okay, Bradley, you have your answer there. So while this is not an endorsement of adoption of ES modules in Node, there's this very strong preference here towards file extension.
Okay, we'll get that message to TC39 and the browser vendors, and that's all I needed from here. So.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move on. So please remember to engage in that issue. if or the discussion there, because it's going to come back to us again. I'm sure in at least once more, but it's going to probably something that bubbles for a while. So please engage if you can. Next issue is 5633, which is adding Michael Dawson back to the CTC. Now, this is coming up because when Strongloop and IBM, when Strongloop was acquired by IBM, we hit the company cap, and we had 2 people step down from the TSC at the time. That was Michael Dawson and Stephen Loomis. We've expanded the TSC since then, and so the company cap allows a bit more flexibility. So this is an option to add Michael Dawson back as a TSC member, given that the company restrictions are, I think it's a quarter the membership for companies. So that's what this is about. It's not a rubber stamp for IBM. It's this is more about the historical fact that we had Michael and Stephen on the TSC, and we'd already accepted them as such, but the company cap prevented that. Are there any comments here before we move on to a vote?
Is there any thought about how many people is there a cap to how many people on CTC? Total.
No, but we will need to think about communication, possible communication concerns at some point. And I'm not sure really how to do that or how we should best think about that.
There is explicitly no limit, so no cap. In the governance.md documentation, it says, explicitly that there's no limit. It just says that the target size is between 6 and 12, and I put a comment on the issue for this meeting suggesting that we might want to consider raising that target size, because I cannot imagine this project with a governing body of 6 people, but maybe I just lack the imagination.
No, I think you're right. I think that made sense when we did that. We had small groups, but yeah. Maybe Rich, you could open a pull request for that with some new wording.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, let's have a vote. So given that there doesn't seem to be any more questions or concerns to be raised publicly anyway, everybody in favor of adding Michael Dawson back as a TSC member, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. Anyone abstaining? And any objections? Anyone saying no? Okay, there we have it. Michael Dawson is back with the TSC. Welcome back on board, Michael. Okay. Moving on, process add warning event. James, where are we at with this? Is this issue number 4782?
Okay, so where we left it off last week is the CTC asked me to go document exactly how the function works. Added a comment to the thread, kind of drawing it out in detail. I made a few additional edits based on feedback from Jeremiah, and also based on his refactoring of the source Node.js file. That landing that impacted how this needed to go in, so I made some changes there. CI is passing. Jeremiah has signed off. Just want to make sure there's no further objections before going ahead and getting it landed.
Is that just one sign off, or do we have anyone else signing off on this yet?
I think there's a couple others.
No recent ones other than myself.
Yeah.
And where was Wyatt at the end of this? Is he are his concerns placated?
Yeah, he came back earlier and said that it looks good to him. He gave a sign off on it. I know Doug Wilson had some feedback, and he came back and said that this works for him as well. He has no objections to it.
Nice. It would be nice to have a bit more sign-off, particularly from the CTC members, but and I'd love to be able to do that, but I'm not sure I can commit to that, so I won't hold that up. To me, it sounds like it might be good to go. Are there any further thoughts or objections on it from this group? Nope. Okay. You've had your chance.
I will. I'll give it 24 more hours then for anyone who wants to weigh in, and then get it landed tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember from last week that the objection was mostly against the deprecation event, but the warning event itself was fairly uncontroversial. So I think you could just move on with it.
Okay. Just quickly then, next one is issue number 3979, which is the legal advice from the legal committee. That's in progress. Michael Rogers, I think you were at the legal committee meeting, which I missed this week. There was a little bit of movement on this. Have you got an update for us?
Yeah. So we have a recommended header that needs to get approved by the board real quick. Or, it may need to get approved by the board real quick. I need to check on that. So we do have a header that we should start adding to stuff. We also identified that a bunch of information was removed. This is a commit like almost a year old now, but there was a lot of licensing information and copyright header information removed from files that really shouldn't have been, because it's actually a violation of our license to do that. So we need to add that back, and then after it's added back, we need to basically ping the copyright owner, in this case Joanne, to see if we can reduce it down to the small form SPDX reference. So I'll have to prepare a commit to basically add all this to like 1 billion files. But yeah, we're finally almost done there.
We could process that as probably a revert commit, couldn't we?
A lot of the files are gone now. Well, not a lot, but a fair number of them are actually just gone now. So I don't think that we'd want to revert. We could.
I mean,
we
good to
also need
record
to
it as
add,
a revert.
Yeah, we also need to just add we still need to add the new header to all the other files as well. So we're going to have to add code no matter what.
Is it possible to maybe talk to Joint beforehand and say, if we add this copyright back instead, is that okay, as opposed to trying to do the two steps?
So we talked with them, and their position is that the initial information should be added back, and then we can discuss like changing it. But
okay,
yeah.
I just thought if we didn't have to go through that, but if they say we do, then forget it.
Yeah, I mean, it really shouldn't have been removed, so we need to make that correct and then go on from there.
Okay, let's move on from this. Unless there's any, stop me when I say move on if you have anything to add. Don't feel like it's a definitive thing. So we're going to do a quick public QA. We're running short on time, but actually we've run over time. But if you have something to ask or say to the CTC that you'd like us to discuss or respond to, please do so in the YouTube feed comments or in IRC in the Node.dev channel, as a number of us are listening there. So is there anything that you'd like for us? And we're going to pause for a little while because we know there's a delay. Jeremiah, do we have anything on YouTube?
No. So it looked like there was maybe a pinned message, pinned chat message, but I'm not sure if it's actually pinned or is just how YouTube displays like the last chat message from last time. So I didn't actually put out a chat message this time. And we've more or less run out of time anyway.
But what was the YouTube link anyway? Can you paste it?
I posted it in IRC and on Twitter. It's always youtube.com/c/node.js-foundation/live. Never changes. Yeah, that.
Okay, I think we've left enough time there. Okay, let's wrap the meeting up then. Next meeting would be the 30th. I won't be able to attend that one. That's overlapping with the board meeting. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks everyone for listening in on YouTube.
All right, thanks, all.
Thanks all.
Thanks.